the first thing that I will say is get a lawyer. You're going to definitely need a lawyer for this one. Now, before we dive in, just a quick reminder. This video is for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. Our full disclaimer is shown here and on our website. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Finance with Anthony. So today we're going to be looking at the personal finance Reddit and addressing two key items. The first one is, how do we develop a good relationship with money? And the second thing is more going to be concentrated on investments. What are the different kinds of investment strategies that I can use to make sure you grow your money into the biggest pot you can see when you go to retirement? So let's dive right into some stories here on the personal finance Reddit and see what stories we have today. So this first one is, upper middle class now, grew up broke. How do I stop being weird about money? Okay, this is more of a philosophical question, but I want to give it a shot. My wife and I are in our 40s and have a 6-year-old son. We earn combined roughly $300K a year. Wow, that's pretty good. And live in suburban Chicago. My wife is a first-generation immigrant, and I grew up with parents who were on SSI/public assistance for huge chunks of my childhood. Stuff was not great money-wise growing up. Our home was foreclosed on, lots of welfare, peanut butter, and government cheese. Parents dealing with substance abuse, that kind of stuff. I know that I am really fucking lucky. A lot of my childhood friends OD'd or got into trouble with the law or made really bad life choices. I'm in my 40s, my kid has 2 loving parents actively involved in his life, we own a home, we have stability. From my wife's point of view, her parents worked really hard and built their way up from nothing so their kids could have a better life, which is true. But I keep worrying that stuff will go sideways at any time, that something will happen, and that anytime we spend money is just less buffer protecting us from homelessness. Having money is fucking great. I know how hard life is when you're broke. When I had a health emergency, I had money on reserve for anything insurance couldn't cover. I'm able to help out food banks for families like mine growing up. I'm able to help charities for causes that are important to me. But I keep thinking the other shoe is gonna drop and we're gonna be fucked again. I don't feel like we have a lot of money because I'm financially supporting an elderly parent. I don't feel like we have a lot of money because I'm financially supporting an elderly parent and dealing with $50K of credit card debt from a personal emergency a few years ago. Have a budget for it. Sadly, paying it off with 0 interest consolidation cards, blah 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 blah. But I see the number on paper and know it's true. I'm the main one in our family doing budgeting, financial planning, handling bills, etc. So how do I just look at money like an emotionless Vulcan and get shit sorted so we're able to plan better for the future? So this is something that I think a lot of us deal with internally. You know, a lot of us deal with, hey, how do I use money as a tool to better advance myself? Or how do I use it as a tool to then support my family or do whatever I need to do in order to make money work for me? So think of it this way. It's, you know, the first thing I will say is sometimes we ourselves get psychological trauma for the relationships that we see our own parents, our friends, for our families. We see that sometimes people have bad relationships with money because what they do with money is that they actually use it as a tool for things they shouldn't be using it for. So for example, maybe they don't use it for investments. They used to buy like a $50,000 handbag instead of using it, for savings or for making sure that, you have a secure future by putting stuff into your 401k. They use it on lavish vacations, crazy price dinners. All of these things are important to understand. When you're looking at the view of someone's relationship with money, what you need to view more than anything is that the kind of relationship I want to have, with money? And the thing is, you don't. What you should be actually looking towards is who actually is it someone who you look up to that's successful, that has managed money very effectively, and learn from them. Get a mentor, or even like while you're in school, go to a school that teaches very basic business things such as accounting or money management. All of these tools are going to be crucial for you to develop then a relationship with money and how to effectively utilize it to make the best investments for yourself, for your family. And this will get the stigma out of your brain that just because my family or someone in my past has failed to properly coordinate with money, doesn't mean you have to as well. What you need to realize is that money is something that you can, work with very closely, can be your partner in a lot of aspects of your life, especially if you know how to utilize it correctly. So this is my advice for this one, and wishing you the best of luck. So for the next one, how much should we 37-year-old married couples save for retirement if we are just starting now? After years and years of living as artist types whose goal was to break even every month and have a little saved for emergency, my wife is graduating from veterinary school. Congratulations. She will be making much more than she used to, 100K, and potentially for more in the future. And we will finally be in a position to start paying off our debt aggressively and then start saving for retirement. However, we are both 37 years old, so we are definitely behind the curve. Like many of you, we never learned anything about finance, such budgeting, such debt, such etc. from our parents or schooling. However, we are blessed to have woken up and are doing our best to correct that now. In the last couple of years, we have become serious budgeters, and it has been a game changer. We plan on keeping our budget more or less the same as it is now. Our current month budget is $4,500 per month in expenses, $54K annual. I don't want us to give into lifestyle creep and to have a vision/plan for what to do with the extra money we will be making. My big question now, though, that I could use some advice on is how much should we save every year for retirement, since we're starting late for retirement? How much do we need to save every year to retire in a state of Mississippi, pretty low cost of living for the US by 65 years old? I understand this is that depends type question, so please just treat it as a thought experiment. I understand that there are different answers to the same question. I'm not interested in hearing all of your different perspectives. How much would you save every year if you were starting from nothing at 37 and went to retire by 65? And where would you put that money? All passive like 401k, IRA, ETFs, or would you mix in some real estate or some more active investments that could generate income in the future? If this was a game, how would you play it? Wow, this is a very interesting post overall. So if I myself were starting from nothing, so this is just me, like if I had a complete reset, I personally probably wouldn't have deviated from where I am now. So it all depends on what you're passionate about. What are your interests in terms of investments? In a lot of cases, it aligns with, what you yourself love to see. I am someone, for example, who loves to see more tangible things. So that's why I myself am more invested in real estate. But there are people who are okay with a little bit of intangible and a little bit more risk. So that's why some people actually invest in the stock market. So it all depends on two factors in terms of investments. The first piece is, how long are you willing to play the waiting game? In this case, the waiting game refers to, are you willing to wait a little bit of time, maybe putting money into high yield savings account, and then buying that property or that real estate that you want to invest in? If you are someone who, does not like to play the waiting game, then the next best thing is to actually invest in the stock market or in something called real estate investment trust, for example. And in the stock market, you have many options. You could do like individual stocks. You can do index funds. There's even funds specifically that are attributed to like gold and silver. There's so much out there. What you really need to define is, what is your interest, and then follow those interests until like a period of time where then you can diversify into other investments. So even in real estate, technically you could diversify your investments by going into different markets, buying different kinds of properties. There's so many things you can do in real estate as well. That's why I genuinely enjoy it. There's so many investment strategies, and it's just like a fun game because it's kind of like you're building your future, building kind of like, your housing portfolio. And the other thing is, it's not a passive 100%, but it does, does have some enjoyment here though, kind of building, your 1, 2, 3, 4 house portfolio, and then continuing to build it and continue to grow your mini empire. So this is my advice for you. So if I were, in your shoes, I would literally just go back into invest in real estate. And depending on the market, you got to buy houses for, much cheaper. Or you could go into higher cost of living areas where the houses will be a little bit more expensive. So it all depends on like where you're planning to settle, because the place that you settle is the place you're going to buy your houses. So hopefully this helps. So let's move on to the next one. Having a friend pay me nearly $7,000. Wow, that's a big chunk of money. Should I ask him to Zelle or wire transfer it? To add on to the post title, I've never needed to deal with a transfer this large before. I understand that Zelle has a daily and monthly limit. Cash and check are out of the question. I'm leaning towards asking to wire to me since I know it can be a one and done deal, but I'd like some confirmation before I do. Could Zelle flag him for trying to make $1,000 payments once a day until he pays me in full? I apologize, this comes out as a dumb question, since I want to do the least potentially painful option of the two for both of us. Part of the reason I still hold on to the Zelle option is that you can make a test transfer without having to pay the wire fee. Edit. Thank you all for the responses. Just wanted to add that we are in the same town. So, here's the kind of the deal here. If your friend is going to wire you or, transfer $7,000 to you, it is completely fine to do it through Zelle. Now, let me explain here. Usually, the one thing that people worry about is the new rule about, hey, if they see a $600 or more transaction, they could flag it for tax purposes, they're going to report it, all that fun stuff. So just to let you know, I've received, transactions that are more than $1,000 from Zelle, sometimes even multiple iterations of it, because, sometimes I do have, people, friends and family who sometimes take, borrow money from me and then they'll pay me back through Zelle. Now, what does this mean for you guys? It is completely fine for your family to pay you through Zelle, even if it's in multiple transactions. You could do like 1,000 or 2,000 depending on your limit per day until they finally get all the money into your account. And funny enough, Zelle loves this so much that they'll actually increase the limit that one person can send to you depending on, the amount of transactions that you get from this person. So they actually encourage, more and more transfers through Zelle. Now, what can you say in this situation? If you do end up saying like, hey, my friend transferred these $7,000, why did he transfer that money to you? So in most cases, what I would say in this case is claim it as a gift. There is like a yearly, gift limit. It changes every year. So definitely the $7,000 that your friend gave you is under the gift limit for the current year. So you have no worries claiming it as a gift and you'll be A-okay. Your friend can gift, X amount per year to each person. So your friend is A-okay to give you this money as a gift. And that's, my best advice if you ever need like an explanation for this puppy. All right, let's move on to the next one. Hello everyone, my name is Anthony and I'm the host of TheLostSanctuary. I hope you've been enjoying our content so far. And if you have, please feel free to like and subscribe. Also, we have our website up here. And we also have some socials down here. And as always, leave your comments down below. Is it unusual that I feel financially insecure at age 32? Still pretty young. I live in New York and earn about $70,000 a year, about $2,000 bi-weekly a year as a teacher. Hey, kudos. Love teachers. I have a disability, so it can be hard to hang on to jobs at times. I currently live at home with my parents. I pay them $900 a month as rent. I put it towards the parent plus loan they took out for their children, as well as contributing to the household in any other way I can. I invest $300 a week and have $233,000 invested. Wow, that's amazing. Invested in retirement / broker accounts. I know that I'm better off than some, but it's frustrating that I cannot move out because the rent is so high in New York. And know that my whole check would be eaten up if I got an apartment in New York and additional costs. Like food and utilities would quickly whittle away all of my investments. I don't even bother dating because I know there would be a massive drain on my finances. Are the majority of people in the same / worse boat? There are very, very, very few people that at the age of 32 have anywhere near $233,000 invested. You are probably in, I can't even say the percentage, you're probably like in the top 1% of like 32-year-olds who have like that kind of money. There's not a lot of people who have that much invested in the market right now. There's people that barely have like $5,000 at that age. Now, one thing that we need to think about is living with your parents is not a bad thing. It's okay to live with your parents and grow your financial situation as much as you can. Things are very expensive right now. Rent, food, all of these items are crazy wallet drainers right now that are making things worse for you, for everyone. So, what do you do in this situation? What I need you to understand is $233,000 is an amazing amount of money that's been invested. Now, if your goal is to move out of your parents' place, what I would recommend is you don't technically have to live in NYC unless, that's really where you want to be. And what I mean by that, so just because you work in NYC doesn't mean you need to live in NYC. So I myself actually work in NYC but I live in New Jersey. So it's very, very possible for you to live in New Jersey and for you to invest in properties that are near NYC so you can commute into the city, as long as you're okay with a slight inconvenience of going into the city, via like the path and, the buses and things like that. So what should you do in this case? If you're really serious about moving out from your parents' place, then I would say start to actually build your down payment or your real estate fund. Essentially, instead of investing so heavily into like whatever you're doing right now, whether it's the stock market, whatever you're doing, try to then pivot now to getting your down payment for your home, and then start researching some markets, like what are the comps, how much are the homes going for in your areas, and try to invest, hopefully before things get too crazy where the interest rates are really low, because that's gonna, make demand go higher, it's gonna make prices go higher, it's gonna be so crazy that you're gonna have a tough time finding a house. So right now is actually not a lot of people can even afford a house. So if you have the ability to actually get to a down payment and buy a house now, you're probably better off than most people right now. So this is my honest advice, and hopefully I wish you the best of luck in buying a home, especially right now when the interest rates are crazy. Which I myself bought a home when the interest rates are crazy, because I'm waiting. I'm taking the risk to make sure that I buy when the times are not crazy, so that I can, refinance when things go a little, lower, the interest rates. So let's move on to the next one. Deceased parent has auto loans, student loans, mortgage loan, credit card debts, medical debts. What are the next steps? My mom had an auto loan for a car that we did not intend to keep. Am I beneficiary responsible for paying the remaining balance? Here's where I'm at. I need to take her death certificate to the bank, which she financed the auto loan, and then what? Everything is still in her name: mortgage loan, house, all utility bills, credit cards, auto loan, student loans, car insurance, etc. I just don't want to say the wrong thing to the wrong entity and be in financial ruin. My husband and I were living with her in our home at the time she passes away, and so the house goes to me. I am an only child, and she had no spouse. What am I responsible for paying back versus debts that will be written off? All right, let's crack this puppy open. So the first thing that I will say is get a lawyer. You're gonna definitely need a lawyer for this one, and so hopefully a lawyer that is also a tax attorney. That'd be great. So now, usually a lawyer would advise you is there a written legal document, usually a will or a testament of, hey, if I pass away, this is what's gonna happen. Usually, even though you are left with something in a will, it's up to you to accept it or not. Now, what is the consequences of accepting an asset? In this case, usually if you're accepting an asset like a house or a car, you are then responsible for anything that's on that car or house. So in this case, if you accept the car, if there's a loan against it, you got to take it. Now, if you take the house and there's a mortgage on it or any liens on it, you got to take it. So there's no such thing as a free lunch. However, in terms of like medical debts, credit card debts, these are considered more personal loans. And unless you actually put yourself down as someone who was going to pay these, it's not on you. You don't have to pay these. These die with the deceased, which I am sorry to hear of, about your situation. But basically, these go with the person who has been deceased. So essentially, you have to first decide, do I want the asset? And then 2, are you willing to take all the debts that are associated with that particular asset? So hopefully this helps, and I'm sorry for your loss as well. Terrible credit score, but need to rent. Of course, gotta find a place to live. Hi, we've been saving up to move out an apartment with horrible conditions and need to be out by June. However, my student loans have completely ruined my credit up, and now it's at 490. Is there anything I can do or assistance/resource I can get without a guarantor? My on-time payment and low usage is amazing, but my loans are terrible. It's been hard paying that I'm in NYC. So this is my honest advice for this one. So if you have, a bad credit score, I would say work with the people who you actually have, any particular loans with, and see if there's any way they can kind of start striking things from your record. So sometimes, you know, you can work with a creditor, and sometimes they'll forgive debts, for example, and that will wipe that off your credit, for example, and usually that's good. So you need to, you know, start working for a creditor, especially if people who are, you know, student loan agencies. They usually tend to work very closely with people and make it so, you know, you actually are able to, you know, wipe out away a few of the, yeah, you know, the oopsies from your credit reports. So yeah, so I would say you can definitely work with your creditor. Alrighty, so the other thing that you can actually do is, if you're you know, if you're open to it, some people actually, you know, will rent you a room for, you know, if you have low credit, it's okay. Like, people do tend to rent rooms, and there's even landlords that are okay with low credits as long as you meet the income threshold, and you know, you have a good background check, you have you know, everything else checks out except for your credit. Then, you know, there are some landlords that will still take you. So, you know, definitely look for these kinds of opportunities. And if worst case, if you do have someone who can co-sign with you for that, you know, for that apartment, then that's even better. That's gonna almost guarantee, especially for someone with a higher credit score than you, to actually get that apartment. So hopefully this helps. And yeah, so that's actually gonna wrap up Finance with Anthony, episode 21. I hope everyone out there has a blessed day, and adios, everyone. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing an amazing job, and I'm wishing everyone out there all the best. All right, until next time, adios.